Hello and welcome to F1 Chronicle. My name is Tom Downey and welcome to episode 236 of Grid Talk, where today we are here to discuss qualifying for the Japanese Grand Prix. Just before we begin, if you enjoy the podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you do, you'll automatically go into our monthly draw to win a Grid Talk t-shirt from our champion range of merch. Now, alongside me, first of all, we have F1 Chronicle's very own Ruby Price.
Morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Let's not go there yet. It's too early.
Absolutely. Second of all, we have Louis Edwards. Louis, how are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you.
Very well. I'm making a sensational return to the show after an absence. You have Steve Jackson. Steve, how are you, my friend?
I have returned. Nick Latifi needs to be concerned. The GOAT title goes to me.
I mean, what can you say to that, really?
Probably a lot of things, and we'll need to offline those for later.
Yeah,
I imagine I'm in trouble now.
Yeah, let's leave those for the after hours show, shall we? But but yes, if you are one of the 72 people who are not yet subscribed to the channel, please do consider helping us out with a like and a subscribe. So it is 9 a.m. here in the UK, and Steve is getting one up on us because for once, it's me, Ruby, and Louis who are up early to watch Formula One. And today, like I said, we're talking about qualifying for the Japanese Grand Prix. So first of all, Louis, I'm going to come to you, and I'm just going to caveat this. Max Verstappen has taken pole position initially. This is subject to him going to see the steward for an incident with Lando Norris. So at the time of recording, he's on pole position. We have not heard anything otherwise. So we will update you if anything comes in. But on the topic of Max, I mean, it didn't look like anybody could touch him today, did it?
No, but the Ferraris definitely gave it a good go. I mean, the gap in the end was, less than a tenth. It was really close. And it goes back to sort of earlier qualifyings that we've seen this season where the Red Bulls and the Ferraris are just so close. It is so apparent that those two cars are so similar. And we really have been robbed of what could have been a much more exciting championship fight this season because it's clear to see just how close these cars are. But Max, in the end, his second run was a bit scrappy. That first sector really let him down, but it was enough. His first run was enough to get him on provisional pole, I will say. I believe as we're recording this now, the series inquiry is just started. So yeah, I mean, Max did a great job. He does a great job in qualifying every week, and it's the reason why he's done so well. But if he does get a penalty, I don't think it's going to be too difficult for him to get back through the field. That Red Bull looks very strong, and there are definitely places to overtake in Suzuka. But you got to give fair play to Ferrari as well because they actually did push him, and it did look for a second like he might have lost that pole.
Yeah, Leclerc did sort of come out swinging a bit in at the start of Q3 as well, which was a bit of a surprise. But Steve, I'll give you both Ferrari drivers because they qualified P2 and P3 respectively, with Leclerc being P2 and Sainz being P3. Not an awful lot in it between them. I mean, there was about a 5 papers difference between them in terms of times. How do you think they're going to fare tomorrow, especially if they end up with a front row lockout?
Comes down to whether Max actually keeps pole, for one, and also I say this half cheekily and half seriously, whether their strategy team is actually interested in leveraging where they've finished today. In saying that, though, this is the closest they've been for quite some time. I mean, it's nice to see that small of a gap between first and second, between two rival teams. We normally we've been very used to having like Mercedes 1 and 2, or not so much this season with Sergio being a bit, but Red Bull 1 and 2. So it's nice having Ferrari just sort of keep Max in check. I actually thought Carlos had this. He looked pretty solid this weekend so far, so I thought he may have had the upper hand on Charles, but there's nothing in it. I mean, Charles's Q3 time 1:29.314. Carlos was 1:29.361. There's nothing in it. In fact, I think between the top four, it's less than it's half a second between the top four, and 0.6 of a second between the top five. So it's been incredibly competitive. So qualifying in this instance is all about those diminishing returns, and Ferrari have obviously got a good qualifying setup. I'm not too sure about their long runs. Nobody really got much of a representative long run in earlier this weekend with all the rain. So yeah, I don't know what the weather's due to do tomorrow. I'm kind of hoping it does rain. That'll, mix things up a wee bit. But the way the grid is at the moment, it'll be interesting. And if Max gets a 3-place grid penalty, he will either charge through the field or punt somebody off, and that's always entertaining depending on what side of the fence you sit on.
Yeah, I mean, Max is absolute golden boy. He would never do anything like that. It's not like his dad's got a reputation for doing things like that. So I don't know where you're coming from, Steve. Anyway, I say that tongue in cheek as a Max fan. So qualified P4 is Max's teammate, Sergio Perez. Red Bull don't like to do things easily, do they? Obviously, if Max is under investigation for quality this week, Perez under investigation last week after he took the win. Louis, Perez, he set the fastest time in Q2 towards the end of the session. He went absolutely bombing around, absolutely flying around at the end of Q2. So I did think for a second he would be on pole, but he's not allowed because Max is going for the title. What do you think his prospects are for tomorrow? Podium, win?
Well, I might let Ruby answer this one.
Oh God.
Because I already have my piece on Max, so I'll let Ruby go for this one.
Thanks, Louis. Yeah, I mean, to say that he was 0.8 off his teammate in FP3, it was a good turnaround for Sergio Perez, I would say, to be, in the zone 4, that battle for P1. Red Bull aren't going to let him do it whilst Max is still, got a championship to win. But Sergio Perez is the one driving that car, and ultimately he's the one that's going to make the difference. If he starts P3 tomorrow because he's going to be ahead of his teammate, potentially, I don't think he's going to stay ahead of his teammate for much longer, given Max only needs to outscore Charles by 8 points and Checo by 6, or to just get the win and fastest lap, and he's got the championship side. But a good showing for Checo to be P4 on a non-street circuit, which we've been calling his pedigree lately.
Yeah, he does seem to have a bit of a penchant for street circuits, I think it's safe to say. But yes, P5. And a much improved outing for him in this qualifying day is Esteban Ocon of Alpine. I mean, given he was out in Q1 last week in Singapore, I think it's safe to say he's back where Alpine will want him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were saying in the preview show earlier this week that Alpine have an amazing car and have amazing drivers. So their reliability has just been horrendous recently. So yeah, it was great work by both Alonso, but especially Ocon. Brilliant to get P5. It's been so close this weekend between the McLarens, the Alpines, and the Mercedes, and it will do wonders for Alpine's, championship standings, as they fell behind McLaren after Singapore. So it is a big opportunity that Alpine have taken here to really stamp their authority on 4th place and not allow McLaren to get a sniff at it, because we don't really know what's going to happen with that Alpine between now and the end of the season. And, given the fact that they're probably going to take engine penalties at some point in the next 4 races because of their engine issues that they had in Singapore, they came out today and they did what they needed to, and Ocon, showing his new teammate Pierre Gasly exactly what he was going to be contending with in that team next season.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say we could see a couple of sparks in Alpine next year. Obviously, with Gasly and Ocon apparently not being the bestest of buddies, so that could make for an interesting dynamic. But hey ho. But Steve, P6 is #blessed, aka Lewis Hamilton. I believe commentary said that he is leading the qualifying head-to-head with George Russell this season. I think he makes this 10-7 or 11-7. Or I might be hearing somebody else's stats. Either way, he's P6, decent result. He loves Japan. Japan loves him. Do you think he's going to hold on to this position for the race tomorrow?
It's hard to say. I think it goes back to what I said before with Red Bull. The just weather has sort of made this quite hard to call. I sort of tricked myself into thinking that Mercedes actually had found something in their car earlier this weekend, and then I realised that you couldn't make those first two practice sessions any more wet if they were in the damned ocean. So the actual representative running wasn't. I don't think that was very fair at all. In saying that, though, it is nice to see #blessed. Sir Lewis Hamilton, actually, beat George Russell on representative pace over a single lap, or over multiple laps. But that one lap is what is obviously what counts, that fastest lap. So yeah, fair play to him. It's been a fairly, I want to say, quiet weekend for Mercedes, and in some ways it's a good thing for them. They've obviously had a bit of a mare of a time. And yeah, they're obviously working behind the scenes to try and get that car sorted for next season. I imagine it will look very different, but they have to make do with the equipment they've got at the moment. I think Lewis's biggest threat is the guy right behind him in the other Alpine. So it's really hard to call. If it's a dry race, I don't think the Mercs have the raw pace to actually stay with Alpine or to keep them there. If it's wet, obviously the actual overall performance side of things tends to drop off a wee bit, and the actual skill of the driver becomes more relevant. It's relevant anyway, but when it rains, we all know how good Lewis Hamilton is, but we also know how good Fernando is in the wet as well. So should be interesting.
Absolutely. I believe there is a somewhat 70% chance of rain tomorrow as well. So we could may well see something exciting tomorrow. I hope so. That's
the best news I've had all weekend.
Yeah. So, Ruby P7, as Steve said, Fernando Alonso. He is 10th behind Hamilton, if that. The top sort of 8-9 drivers really close in qualifying. Do you think Fernando will give it a bit of spice, or do you think he'll be shutting GP2 engine down the main straight again?
I mean, this is the location where he famously came up with the GP2 engine phrase, for Honda's home race when he was back in McLaren Honda. I mean, it's Fernando, isn't it? Like, he's always going to bring a bit of spice anyway. Like, he obviously has some unfinished business after the disappointing result in his 350th, I think, race last time out in Singapore. It just all depends. It's Formula One. Anything's possible. And when you've got Fernando Alonso in your car, like, that just makes the even more impossible just a little bit more possible. Provided his car actually survives the race, though, that is, because, as we've mentioned, Alpine have been awful with reliability this season.
Yeah, Alpine has been about as stable as my emotions this year, so it's safe to say it's not been brilliant. Fernando's either going to sort of blow up on a certain lap, or he's going to do late braking into the S's, or both at the same time. Anyway, Louis P8, George Russell, bit of a arguably disappointing showing from him. He was right on the cusp of the cutoff for Q3 at the end of Q2. I didn't think he was even going to make it into Q3 at one point. Maybe it's a bit of wishful thinking on my part. But no, he got there. P8, you could say not a brilliant result, but also the times between the drivers, like we said, are so fine in Q3 that it might not tell the whole story. But could you see him charging his way up the field tomorrow? Do you think he'll get back into a top 5 finish after that came crashing to a halt last week?
I mean, I think as Steve was mentioning with Lewis, I think this is going to be 2 different races depending on whether it's going to be dry or wet. And I know there is a significant chance of rain tomorrow. And I think the Mercedes showed in practice that they do have good wet pace. I think the key for them, maybe like Singapore, will just be getting temperature in those tyres now to make sure they get a good start. Just make sure to get plenty of temperature. Otherwise, they could find themselves falling back. But I think for Mercedes, tomorrow is going to be a matter of trying to keep with the Alpines, try and get ahead of them if possible, and just keep them behind. I don't think they're really going to be looking at the Red Bulls and the Ferrari. So I think that 5th place is what the 2 Alpine cars and the 2 Mercedes drivers are going to be fighting for tomorrow. But as for Russell's sort of chances, I think he's just a little bit off where we would really be expecting him to. I think Singapore was a really tough weekend on him, and he hasn't bounced back as I would have hoped. But it happens in Formula One. Sometimes you have a bad race and it kind of just knocks on to your next one. But he'll get back in some time. But I think the Alpines are just going to be a little bit too quick, and I think Lewis is already in a better position and will probably hold on to that 5th place if he gets it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. Steve, I'm going to give you both these drivers next to each other. Running at the top 10, P9, we have Sebastian Vettel, very welcome return to the top 3, and just edging his teammate is Lando Norris in P10. I mean, Seb, it was nice to see him back in Q3, especially given where his teammate qualified, and Norris once again beating Danny Rick.
Yeah, bit of a semi-emotional end to Seb's qualifying. He had a wee message over the radio just saying he'll miss this place, which is fair. He's had a lot of success here, 4 prior wins with Red Bull, or 3 with Red Bull, 1 with Ferrari, I think maybe. Was it all 4 with Red Bull? I don't know. I digress. But yeah, nice to see him in the top 10. It didn't like the Aston Martin didn't actually look too easy to drive for him. I mean, they were both sort of moving around a fair bit. I think especially in practice 3 that through the lower speed corners, it really was just skating around. It looked like it was on ice, so it didn't look like a particularly pleasant car to drive. So fair play to him for putting it in 9th. And yeah, no surprise, Lando well ahead of his teammate in terms of 1 lap pace. It was quite close in Q2. I think 2/10 or thereabouts, and then Lando's Q3 pace was was nearly 6/10 above what Daniel managed to achieve in Q2. So there was obviously far more in that car for Lando for Q3, but the track was actually slowing down a wee bit as well. And we've seen when temperatures drop and that sort of thing, and it's not as compliant to surface. That's where Daniel really struggles. So I'm not too surprised about that 6/10 gap. But yeah, I'm hoping for I'm hoping for a solid race result for both McLarens tomorrow. I mean, the livery that they've got on these cars, I don't know if it's permanent or not, but I quite like it. Looks great. But I think they probably need to to work on those race runs. But only temporary. Okay. I mean, keep it on there because it looks cool. But yeah, bigger problems. I think bigger problems for McLaren especially.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that a fancy livery is going to fix. Unfortunately, as nice as it does look, as much like the Golf livery of Monaco last year, it's not going to hide the obvious pains, especially for Ricciardo. Okay, moving sort of further down into Q2, Valtteri Bottas, P12. I don't really know what to make of him today. He was sort of, he looked okay, but then he looked a bit slow, and then he just needs, he needs to make some of his espresso with his porridge, I think, to get him going a bit. Could we see him in the points tomorrow, do you think? Or do you think he's destined for P12?
I think how you were starting that kind of just described Valtteri Bottas' career so far. He looked okay, and then he was a bit more disappointing. But yeah, it all depends really. Like if Ricciardo has the race that we know Ricciardo can do, which is finishing about 30 seconds off his teammate, but still, competitively, I don't see Bottas getting into the points, and it all depends on whether Vettel, has given up entirely on Formula One. But I see him sort of staying around where he is. That's kind of the races that Valtteri Bottas has been driving lately. It's certainly not the highs of the start of the season where Alfa Romeo absolutely smashed their car weight versus everyone else. But yeah, it's just been a bit of an anonymous session, I'd say, for Valtteri Bottas today, and it could even be another anonymous race.
Like his anonymous career, I suppose. Anyway, God, you can tell us early. Behind Bottas is home hero Yuki Tsunoda. He outqualified his teammate, made it into Q2. Seemed to be struggling with brake issues, and I noticed, I think it was the end of one of his runs in Q1, he had a huge lockup into the final hairpin and had an enormous flat spot on the front of his, I think it was on his front right. But still, into Q2, do you think the sort of home advantage, if you like, helps? Because most commentators say it gives you about 2/10. It appeared to today.
Well, I'd hope so, because Yuki's going to need it, isn't he? Because I think he needs a bit of home luck just to get him to the end of a Grand Prix safely. But as it would appear, the car is not wanting to help him do that because it won't stop when he asks it. And it was the same for Pierre Gasly in this session. I think Tsunoda did a great job to get it out of Q1 in the first place. Maybe a bit of home favour there. But I wasn't really expecting him to get much further than that. And I think where he ended up was kind of where we were expecting. But he was looking good. I think it's just the problem was that car just couldn't stop, and he just forever having issues into the slow corners, be it the hairpin midway through the is it a hairpin midway through the track, or at that final chicane. It's just these places where you can lose a lot of time if you get it wrong on the brakes. And when you've got a car that is just, I'm not quite sure what the problem was, and don't sure if the brakes were getting long, or they were just, or the car was just refusing to stop, or there was just like an issue with like glazed brakes or something. I don't know. They haven't really said, but hopefully they can get it sorted for the race. It's going to be one that Yuki will be determined to finish, and it'd be great if he does, because I think Yuki's had to go through a lot this season. He's really not been as good as I'd hoped, but he will get it. Of course, this won't be his only Japanese Grand Prix. He is still contracted for next year, so theoretically he can still do it again if it goes wrong. But I think he'll be in for a good race tomorrow, as long as his car can actually stop.
Yeah, and it does seem to be an issue which has been plaguing AlphaTauris this weekend. So I mean, knowing his luck, he'll have brake failure and stuff into the wall in front and sort of on the main straight. At least he'll get a big cheer for it. P14 is Guan Yu Zhou Guan Yu. I'm never quite sure which way around to say that. I thought he was going to outqualify Bottas at one point. Sadly, didn't. Steve, bit anonymous again. I mean, I don't really know what to say about Zhou. You got anything to add?
Yeah, not for lack of trying, but yeah, very much an anonymous weekend. He's definitely not a terrible driver. I just don't think this is a track that particularly suits the short wheelbase of the Alpha. Does quite well in Sector 1, but beyond that, it's down on pace and just struggles for high speed stability. It's a tricky one. I think the Alfa Romeo we saw at the start of the season, with the ridiculous weight undercut that they managed to get over everybody else. It's not false performance, because performance is a package. It's everything. It's your power. It's the way it's delivered. It's weight and so on. But I think that maybe that may have hidden a few just sort of like quirks of that design. It's by far and away the shortest car in the grid in terms of its wheelbase. It's also the lightest, but that doesn't necessarily translate to a car that can actually cope with these high speed circuits. And we saw that at Austria. We saw it at was it Spa, I think, as well, where Alpha was a bit just sort of inconspicuous and not really getting anywhere. So it's an interesting car philosophy, and I think they have nailed it in the long run. That Formula One is moving more towards these sort of festival weekends at street circuits and car parks in the middle of Vegas, which sounds about as exciting as stepping on a Lego. But I mean, they do have I think one of the more consistent car concepts on the grid, and that they've chosen a design philosophy and a path that they want to go down and stuck with it. But it doesn't do them any favors when we get to these, more typical and traditional FIA circuits where the speed is quite important. And no matter how slippery they try and make that car, it's not going to make up for the fact that it is quite a handful in high speed, direction changes. So I mean, I think again, if it's a wet race tomorrow, that will be where they can, capitalize on some misfortune of others. And I think they were up in the sort of, I think, I'm just having a look. Valtteri finished Q1 in 9th, Zhou Guan Yu in 11th, and then it was 8th for Porridge, and then 10th for Zhou in Q2. So, in free practice 2. So those wet sessions do show that they do have far better wet pace than they do dry, but we also know that those practice sessions aren't really representative. So, keen to see how it goes, but I'm going to keep my expectations fairly low for this one.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough with Alfa Romeo. I mean, I don't. Yeah, you covered everything off there. Ruby, Mick Schumacher, outqualified his teammate for once, which, well done. I think the most spectacular thing he did this weekend so far was crashing after the end of one of the 3 practice sessions, so he didn't bring out the red flag during the session. What a good guy. But yeah, outqualified his teammate, made it into Q2, was last in Q2, but still made it there. Anything to say on him?
I mean, like you say, I think it was a good job for him to outqualify his teammate after very limited running between the wet and dry sessions. Obviously, they had to rebuild most of that Haas after the aquaplaning incident at the end of Q1. But yeah, it'd just be nice to see Mick actually finish a race with some, I don't know, panache. Just actually giving us a reason to associate the name with him, if that makes any sense. Like, he's being billed as this marketing tool based on his name, but can we not have a marketing tool based on some talent, which I'm sure he's got, but he's just not showing it at the minute. And I don't know if that's a Haas problem or if that's a Mick problem.
yeah. And first of all, shots fired. But yeah, but I think that's a very good point. You know, his name is helping him and hindering him at the same time. I think it's fair to say. We'll move into the last few drivers quickly because there's not an awful lot to talk about. Louis Albon, P16. I mean, he's in Williams. What can you say? You got anything to add on him or not really?
No.
Cool. Gasly, P17, suffered brake issues. Anything to add on Gasly? Anybody? I'm just going to throw this out there now because
he's very shouty now that he's been freed.
Yeah, he was, wasn't he? Yeah.
I said to other Tom in the chat during qualifying, just that when they interviewed him after Q2, after Q1, sorry, it's just the face of a man who's just mentally checked out. Yeah. I think, I imagine there's quite a bit of relief that he's leaving, because you just sort of get the impression that he's sort of considered damaged goods at Red Bull, which is a shame because we know he can drive. Just in the chat, everyone, if you can put down who punches who first when him and Esteban are at Alpine together next year. I'm going to say punch by Australia and walls in the garage by Hungary.
All right, thanks, Steve. Yeah, cool. Thanks for that. I think Gasly's just going to bear shit Ocon because Ocon's a little weasel. If you ask me. P18, Kevin Magnus. This is just descended into anarchy now. P18, K-Mag. Anybody got anything to do with K-Mag? Because I thought it was a bit of a disappointing show from him today. Ruby
losing to Mick.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's.
I genuinely forgot about him. I'm being serious. I had to scrape for where he was all weekend.
I've just had to scroll further down on the webpage to find his name.
Yeah, I know some of it's TV time. Like, if you're down the back, you don't get the TV time. But I mean, it's. Yeah, the hopes and expectations of K-Mag making a triumphant return to Haas they're gone.
I'm struggling to recall the last time a team promised so much but delivered so little in terms of a sort of like comeback.
McLaren, Honda.
Oh, that's a good shout. Yeah.
Or this being the year that the target on backs.
MasterCard Lola. Does that count?
No. That's just a meme by this point.
Graham Motor.
Oh God alive. Anyway, right. The last two drivers on the grids. God help us with these two on the back row next to each other. Lance Stroll and Nicholas Latifi. Now, have they had a coming together this season? I think so. I can't quite remember. And I just want to point out that Latifi, absolute gent that he is, qualified P20 with a 5-place grid penalty, so nobody else get affected by it. What an absolute standout guy. That's how considerate he is.
I think he should have to actually be like the equivalent of 5 more grid places back.
I think he should just start from back in Singapore at this
Guys, I've got breaking news.
That's not.
Sorry, breaking news.
Max Verstappen has received a reprimand.
Come on.
A reprimand.
Come on.
Really?
Like, here you go. You've just endangered your life and the life of another driver. Slap on the wrist. Don't do it again. But if any other driver does it, it's a 5-place grid penalty and you have to go to dinner with Marco.
Steve, put the gin down.
Sorry. The good thing is, with Lance and Nicholas next to each other, they're both Canadian, so they'll just be really polite about who gets who into T1. So, you go first. No, I insist after you. It's fine.
Oh God, life has just descended into something.
I mean, that's what the FIA are doing. Descending into something.
Yeah. If we actually put Latifi 5 equivalent places back, there's a real risk that the course car, the medical car behind them will actually pass him. If we consider that, is the course car eligible for points?
I don't know.
Well, we've currently got 22 people in the Drivers' Championship with a 20-car race, a 20-car championship. So who knows? Why not add Burt Mylander to it
You
as
got to
well?
think of the amount of laps that Burt Mylander's led in the wet. You know,
Yeah,
should have won. He should have won the
Spa
Belgian Grand Prix.
2021.
Yeah, he is the GOAT.
Yeah.
Latifi is fired. He is the GOAT.
Well, the Latifi's fired anyway. So that was your rather chaotic roundup of qualifying for I was going to say for the Belgian Grand Prix. No, that's not right. For the Japanese Grand Prix of 2022. As you can tell, I don't usually do these things in the morning because I'm still waking up. So let's do let's do some predictions for tomorrow. I want to hear everybody's prediction for who they think is going to win and who their podium is going to be. So first of all, Ruby, who do you think is going to win tomorrow?
I think it's going to be Nicholas. No, it's going to be Max Verstappen. Like he wins from 14th. He's starting pole now with a reprimand. He's won this race tomorrow.
Okay, Louis, who's going to win tomorrow?
Ocon.
I like the way you think. Steve, who's going to win tomorrow?
Not interested.
Fair enough. Thanks for coming.
I'm actually quite hosed off with this. A reprimand for that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Save it for the post show, Steve. Save it for the post show.
Yeah, Steve, save it for the post show.
Okay. Logic would dictate Max. I think Fernando's got an outside chance though, especially if it buckets down. I think Fernando or Lewis. If it buckets down, I think those two will be scrapping for the lead, purely because every other car's been set up for. I think Merc is setting up for a wet race, shows with how draggy it is, and Alpine are just going like just bananas for it because they want that P4 for constructors. So yeah, I think those two for spicy, but for logic, I think Max.
Okay, and for me, especially now he's got a reprimand. Even if you'd have had a 5-place grid penalty, I'd have said Max. But yeah, I think it's provided he doesn't stuff the start or what have you. I think he's going to win. Okay, I want to hear your podiums as well. So Ruby, you've obviously said Max is going to win. Who do you think is going to be on the podium alongside him?
If it's a wet race, I'd go with Steve options of Hamilton and Alonso, maybe. Or I might save that for a bold prediction and say Leclerc and Sainz.
Okay, so you're going Leclerc, Sainz, yeah? Okay, Louis, what's your predictions for the podium?
Well, I've already put Ocon on to win, so I'm going to go with Charles second, and then go Perez third, because I think there's going to be an accident with Max and potentially Sainz.
Have you been drinking?
No, it's just early in the morning. I've just woken up.
Okay. Steve, who do you think is going to round out the podium?
Dry race. I think starting order: Max, Charles, Carlos. Wet race: Lewis, Fernando, and just because I'd love to see the old timers on the podium all together one more time, Seb for third.
I would like to see it. But
I would love to. Like, it's a very outside chance, but that would make me a very happy lad. I'd love that.
Absolutely, yeah. That would be nice. To be fair, and just quickly, bold predictions. Ruby, what's your bold prediction for tomorrow?
Wet race, Lewis and Alonso. I've already said it.
Yeah, fair. Louis, you've already said yours. Ocon to win. So.
I don't think that's that bold. I think, some collisions. Especially if I say if Max and Carlos come together tomorrow, then there's potential for safety cars and strategies. And I think the Alpine has the pace. When take raw power out of the equation when you've got rain, and you've then got a very competitive Alpine, I think. So I don't think it's completely off the out of the box to say that he has a chance of winning. But I'm gonna bold prediction. I'm gonna go with both AlphaTauris to score points.
Okay, that is very bold. And Steve, dare I ask?
Crofty will say it's lights out and away we go. And if it rains, Mick Schumacher top 8.
Ooh.
If it rains, top 8. Practice 1, he was on it. Absolute king.
And totally put it in the wall. Okay. Right. Well, thank you everybody for listening, for watching. Apologies if that was a bit chaotic this morning. I just want to give everybody a chance to promo themselves or their media outlets of choice. So first of all, Ruby, who are you? What are you doing here? Who gave you a key? And where can we find you?
I think the same could be said to you, Tom, but
yeah, fair.
I'm Ruby. I'm one of the hosts of Grid Talk, and you can find me on the socials at Rubes, RUUBEZ. Put a 001 if you want to find me on Instagram in the end.
Very hipster of you. Louis, where can we find you? Who are you? Get out of my house. What do you do?
You'll never find me, Tom. I co-host this majority of the most weeks. So if you want to find more from me, just subscribe to the F1 Grid Talk podcast.
Okay, and last but not least, Steve, please get out of the basement. Where can we find you? Where are you from?
In your basement, apparently. You set yourself up. So I'm one of the admin / mods for Shakedown, which is a motorsport conglomerate. Now, normally I'd plug this, but I am going to get a bit serious for a moment. Last weekend at Bennett's British Superbikes, unfortunately, there's a bit of an accident which involved Chrissy Rouse, who sadly succumbed to his injuries a couple of days ago. So I just wanted to pass on my deepest condolences to the Rouse family. Chrissy was an incredible rider and just a solid human being. So really sad, but on a slightly more positive note, we do motorsport stuff for everything. So open wheel, motorcycles, GTs, prototypes, rally, you name it, we've probably got it. Just no V8 supercars because fisticuffs. So come find us. You can find us on Facebook. So look up Formula Shakedown or Moto Shakedown or just Shakedown or whatever sort of motorsport discipline you're into. We'll be happy to have you.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, and I'm part of the Formula Shakedown group on Facebook, and they are a fantastic bunch of individuals there. So I would highly recommend partaking in some healthy debate if you want. Just don't be an idiot, please. And me, I am also a co-host, obviously, of Grid Talk alongside Ruby and Louis and several of our other dazzling presenters. You can find us. This is a lovely segue. You can find us on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, Omni Studio, and Pocket Casts. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to both qualifying and race results. Please also consider supporting the channel on Patreon so we can get better mics, lights, and recording equipment. You can also get your hands on some official Grid Talk merch at f1chronicle.com/store. Also, please make sure you are subscribed so you're the first to know when each weekly episode is released. We will be back tomorrow to review the I was going to say Belgium again. We will be back tomorrow it's because there's a thought of rain. It's just get PTSD. Tomorrow, we will be back to review the Japanese Grand Prix after a 2-year hiatus. So please do come, watch, listen, partake, and we will see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.
Bye.
my Jesus, fuck, that was carnage. God alive.
I'm hosting tomorrow.
Yeah, good luck, Rubes.
All right, before we get stuck into this reprimand, I'm going to go get more gin. I'm turning off my video briefly.
No worries.
I will be back. Yeah, I apologize. I actually, no, stuff it. I don't make any apologies for what I'm about to say about the FIA.
No.
Be right back.
Yeah, no worries.
For legal purposes, the ideas of any of the hosts does not represent Formula One Grid Talk podcast entirely.
Or
And if there is, I haven't left yet. If there are any legal issues, please send all inquiries to Ruby Price at Shakedown. I'll be right back.
I don't have that email address.
You do now.
I mean, no wonder Red Bull went over the budget cap if this is how much they're paying off the FIA. Like, it's
Yeah.
a reprimand for that is bollocks. Because it's like one of the fastest sections of the track, and Max is literally sideways with less than a car's gap. Lando had to go
It's
off.
flat out. You can do it one-handed these days, as we've seen so many times on the F1 shorts.
I'm saying, didn't Chuckles do it a few years ago?
Yeah, because he was holding his wing mirror because it was like, I say wing mirrors, so they have any others on Formula One cars.
After he had that, he just drove into Max at the start of the race. He was like clinging onto it while just doing one-handed.
I hope that happens tomorrow.
It's just, I mean, 3 places is not really going to hurt Max, is it?
It's not, but it's a matter of principle.
Yes, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, just I don't
God, he's back.
I just don't understand. It's so dumb.
Right. Question: If that were any other driver, what would the penalty be?
3 places.
Three or 5
3
places.
places.
Yeah. So, can we sort of come to the conclusion, and I think this is quite a logical one, that there are some blatant and very evident examples of what I'd like to call favoritism, or for lack of a better word, within the stewarding decisions, because Max seems to get away with almost everything.
It's the Vettel 2018, I think it was, excuse of we don't want penalties to impact the championship.
But
yeah, because it's really going to have an impact this year.
Then where do you draw the line at that then? That is an incredibly slippery slope to, okay, you've just had 2 drivers collect each other. One of them is now seriously hurt or killed, but we don't want to penalise the other guy because he's chasing the guy in first for the championship and there's a 2-point gap.
I mean, that kind of went out the window last year anyway. It
just doesn't make sense. But we know it doesn't make sense. It's just, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. I'm actually getting incredibly fatigued with Formula One, not with the racing itself. Like, I love Sunday or stupid o'clock on Monday mornings for me most of the time, but everything else is just becoming, it's hard to remain invested in a sport that doesn't seem to give much thought to consistency. And if this was the same sort of penalty applied with every other incident, then that's consistency. It doesn't matter what the consistency looks like; it just needs to be consistent. This isn't it. So, anyway, it's something I could go on about for a while. So I won't. But yeah, I think I've made it abundantly clear that it's for me anyway. It's just bit of a joke.
Yeah. I mean, Jawad has said in the live chat, it's a matter of principle, setting a low bar with the potential in budget cap sanctions as well. We're expecting the budget cap to be announced, the compliance for the budget cap to be announced on Monday. Yeah. And there are alleged breaches of that budget cap. And with at this point, like I'm half expecting a reprimand to be the penalty as well, if that is the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting to the point now where it's just like, what do reprimands actually mean?
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, did they say that if you get 3 in a season, you get what, a 3-place good drop, 5-place good drop? It's like, so you can get away with.
Yeah, because it's separate to penalty points, isn't it? A reprimand is a separate thing again. Yeah.
It's a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
And it's a slap in the face with the other driver.
Mm.
It would have been a slap in.
It would have been a slap in the bloody barriers
if Norris had actually hit him.
Yeah.
That's very much like that accident would have been just as bad as who was it? Toyota 2002, 2003 went off at 130R and broke their back. I can't remember who it was, but might have been Anthony Davidson actually. Potentially, I don't know, but that's just the word. Like any part of any circuit is is dangerous. But yeah, that's one of the worst places I can think of having an accident is at the exit of 130R. That's just a nightmare.
I mean, it's just the problem. The problem is just the FIA just lack just the bollocks to just actually come to a decision on anything and stick with it. The amount of flip-flopping we get from the FIA, because of course, like this incident could have been horrific, and we've seen incidents in the past so many times where drivers are not penalised correctly because the FIA have such like different standards for different drivers, and they don't want to, interfere in whatever's going on. Like, if their decision today was based on the fact that they don't want to interfere in the championship, there really isn't much of a championship to begin with to mess with. If anything, it would make it more exciting for Max to come through the pack tomorrow and try and claim his second world championship rather than so if they're worried about the show, then they've done pretty much the wrong thing, because we're now expecting Max to just romp it from the start and win the race.
It wasn't. I don't think it was caused by penalties, but it's like when Vettel had to come from last and a spin in the race in Brazil, I think, to then win the championship in what I think was 2012, after hitting Bruno Senna.
2012.
They've obviously made a decision at the end of last season on entertainment value. Give us some entertainment then,
So there's a comment just in the live chat from Beards Mannheim HBF. Thanks for your comment. Look, that is a fair point. But that is the point we're trying to make, is there's just a lack of consistency with these, with penalties or reprimands or whatever you want to call them, regardless of who it is. Like, I think part of it, and I am a Max Verstappen supporter. It's a tricky thing to look at with such a focused scope. This is becoming more of a general issue within the actual like stewarding and the decision making around penalties. I appreciate that they don't want penalties to impact the racing, but if penalties aren't there to impact the race, if penalties aren't taken seriously, in the sense that they are impacting racing and people stop doing things that lead to penalties, where does that process begin? Where does it end? What does it look like? Because at the moment, we've just got no consistency with it, and it doesn't matter who it is. It just so happens that Max is the driver leading the championship, and this just happens to be getting a lot of airtime because it's it's just a high profile incident. There are a handful of incidents that happen every race. We just don't see them all. But there are always things that crop up that get looked at after the race or whatever. It's just regardless of what occurred on track, thankfully, they are both okay. It was a very near miss, which could have been hideous. But the issue is now is how we actually navigate what is a very clear problem within the penalty system.
And it's like,
tear it all down.
Yeah, he's setting not the right precedent that F1 was. How many years have we been saying there's a lack of consistency? And I thought one of the big things after last year was they brought in the new race directors to implement this kind of consistency and tightening all the rules. And that's where we had things like, the whole jewelry thing and all the rest of it. Never mind
VAR thing that they ever talked about. Like VAR style sort of judging.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
We never hear from that. And if
Yeah.
it's making decisions, it's doing an absolute shit job of it.
Yeah. It's just... Do you know, I had completely forgotten about that. I didn't even remember that was coming in this year. Also, if you hear rustling, I apologise. Yeah, there's a little pudding next to me. But yeah, no, this whole VAR thing. Because wasn't it controlled from the F1 sort of HQ or like media centre thing in Biggin Hill or wherever they are, wherever F1 is?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because it's all part of their carbon footprint and all the rest of it, which I get, which is fair.
Yeah, that's why we're racing in Las Vegas the week before we're racing in Abu Dhabi next season.
And bearing in mind we've already had some Middle Eastern races, and they're going back to the Middle East at the end of the season. But let's not go down
the
that.
reason why we're racing Canada midway through the European season.
Yeah,
but it's all.
It's because they speak French, Louis.
The planet. It's all in the aim of warming up the planet because of the European winter that's coming. It's it's a year. It's a few months late, but it's being done for a reason. And also, from a serious side though, yeah, that's not being environmentally conscious at all.
Yeah, that's probably a whole podcast in itself.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
but yeah, let's save that for the off season, shall we? But yeah, no, it's just it's just one thing as well is I've got the document open next to me, right, from the FIA, and I'm going to read out where it says reason. So bear with me on this. I'm leaning off kilter because I'm getting into zone. Where's my pencil? Because I'm shit. I'm going to use my Apple Pencil to make some points. Okay, so fucking listen up now.
Oh, it's a $700 pencil.
No.
Other smart device pencils are available.
Yeah. But
it's not a normal pencil. You've got to use proprietary paper.
Yeah, but
sorry. Anyway,
it's all right. I didn't pay for it, but pay for it. Although I'm a director, so either way, so it's kind of back to square one.
Right. What's the document say, Tom?
It says, right, reason, bear in mind, it's Max's first reprimand of the season as well. The sewer turd from Max and Lando, with blah, blah, blah. The driver of car 1 was aware of car 55 in front and car 4 approaching from behind and decided to accelerate at precisely the same time as car 4 decided to overtake car 1. So basically, Max knew Sainz was ahead of him and he knew that Lando was approaching. Max decided to overtake or to speed up as Lando was trying to overtake. There's unfortunately, due to lack of tyre temperature on Max, the driver temporarily lost control of the car, causing him to snap anti-clockwise, and we saw that from the onboard. Lando stated it was simply an unfortunate incident. However, it is the driver's responsibility at all times to maintain control of their car, even Latifi. Regarding penalty, all previous breaches of this nature have resulted in a reprimand. Hence, a similar penalty is imposed in this case.
Okay. What about Canada 2019 then? They blamed the fact that Vettel was not controlling his car and dangerously drove, almost put Hamilton into the wall.
Which he didn't.
And they gave him a penalty in the race.
which everybody said was not a penalty.
Yeah.
Thank you, Louis. You've just made the point that we've been trying to say.
This is
where
this
is the
issue.
consistency?
The issue isn't Max. It just so happens that it was Max who did this, who is probably the most high-profile driver in Formula One at the moment, and he's leading the championship. And that in itself causes some rifts, depending on what side of the Verstappen camp you sit on. The issue is the consistency.
Yeah.
If the same logic was applied in Canada in 2019, Vettel would have won. So, yeah, it's frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. As I mentioned before, it is hard to enjoy the sport in quite the same way when decisions being made in the background are just what I'd describe as flaky, for lack of a spicier word that I probably can't use on a podcast that's for human consumption. Can we talk about Mick Schumacher for a second?
Go for it.
Has the FP1 incident sort of driven the final nail into the coffin for his time at Haas, or was that done already? What do you think?
I think it's an expensive nail in his coffin. In a season with a budget cap where damage is also included in that.
Well, look at sorry, Bruce, just on that point. Look at Saudi when he crashed in quali, and even though he was declared fit to race, they opted not to enter him because of the cost of the repairs and all the rest of it. They just fucked it off, basically.
Yeah, because he had Saudi, he snapped the car in half again at Monaco.
Yeah, that was a scary
That
one.
was horrific.
Yeah, did he put it in the wall in Hungary as well?
He's put it in the wall a few times.
I was about to say, he's done it so often, it's hard to.
It's hard to remember.
It sort of goes back to what Ruby said before, is that there's so much pressure on the kid. Just purely by association of who his father is. And I think I've said it on the podcast before as well. He's not his dad. He's Mick Schumacher. He's not Michael. He's a completely different character. And Michael was...
he's missing three characters.
Well, he's missing three characters for one, but Michael was definitely a bit of an alien in which he was just... He had that inhuman ability, a bit like Senna and Lewis and so on as well, to sort of read something before it actually happens. It's hard to explain, but they're all drivers who are able to react to something so quickly. It's like there's some sort of like manifestation or like ability to see the outcome before the thing actually occurs. It's pretty incredible. Mick clearly doesn't have that same ability, but I do think he's worth investing in, if not just to prove that he can do it. We know he can do it. It usually takes him a season or two. I mean, we saw in F2 as well. It takes him a season or two to find his feet, and he does get competitive. We know he can do it. The variable here is that it's not a control series. These cars are all quite different to each other, and the Haas is... if they started out fairly strong and then it all sort of skated back a wee bit, but I think he's got more potential than what we're seeing, and it's just a shame that it's being, I guess, drowned out by comments from people saying that he doesn't belong here and that he's not his dad and that sort of thing, and it's all frankly kind of bullshit because he's clearly not his dad. We haven't perfected cloning yet. And he's his own person. I think that needs to be remembered. On the other hand, I fully understand where Gunter Steiner's coming from when he says that, when he's saying these incidents just can't happen, because they can't. That was just quite silly.
However, replacing him with Antonio Giovinazzi, who crashed the Sauber twice on his deputization for Sauber before he came in.
Yeah. Same corner as well.
Yeah. Same corner. Yeah. I do it once. I do it again to make sure I do it properly. I do it twice.
At least he's consistent. That's why they rained off 2021, because people were probably putting odds on him crashing the same corner.
Crashing twice at the same corner. Big success. Oh dear, Italian Jesus. I miss him, but that's it. Like Antonio had raw performance that was quite astonishing as well. Like bearing in mind the limitations of the Alfa Romeo before we switched to these ground effect cars, it was, he put in some pretty solid performances. He did quite well at times.
Yeah.
But then he had some absolute shocking weekends that just sort of made you wonder why he was there in the first place. But I think every driver on the grid has had a weekend where things have just not gone well, like Lewis in Germany 2018, Max China, when was it, 2017, when he punted Seb off. Like everyone's had bad weekends. I think Lewis is probably one of the worst culprits for blatantly driving into the back of Kimi Raikkonen in Canada in 2008. It's just everyone has off weekends, some more than others, but there's this, I think there's a lot of tribalism in Formula One now where when a driver starts to show some cracks in the armor, that snowballs very quickly into they don't deserve that drive. A bin would do a better job, blah, 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 blah. Like lots of comments from people, and I'm just sitting there wondering what side of the couch they're tweeting them from. But it's just, yeah, it's unfortunate. I would like to see Mick get another chance. On the other hand, I would understand if he doesn't appear in F1 next year because we all know that it's a money-driven sport now. It often counts for more than talent.
Yeah. One thing I would like to point out or sort of say about Mick is he's never been like a sort of like, oh my God, he's got 15 pole positions or all the rest of it. If you look at his Formula 2 career, I don't think he got pole position at all. And he's never been known for his outside qualifying pace. He's got pretty good racecraft, and if you look at when he won his championship, it took him a year or so to get into the groove of it. And I think, especially given we've had a sort of massive shake-up in the regulations this year, because the car this year is vastly different to the cars we had last year. I think that sort of almost sort of like delayed his progress a bit. I get that F1 is a results-driven sport, and if you're not getting results, you'll be out because there are a lot of other people who would love to take that seat and a lot of other people who will bring backing on the rest of it. And people who are out of current seats will be looking for seats vis-a-vis Danny Rick. I also think that the results that Mick has had this season don't show the whole story. Because Canada, he was going to get points. He was bob on for points and reliability failed him. Miami, he was going to get points until he had that coming together with Seb. Granted, a bit of his own making, but he's been in the position a few times where he's been there for points, and he's been there or thereabouts. He's been let down by some poor strategic options. He's not always had the best things. Like he's not always had the best of pit stops. Which granted, it might only be like 0.3, 0.2 of a second, but you only need to look at Monza last year to see what a slow pit stop can do for you. And
gives you a new hairstyle.
Yeah. So just a short, flattened sides.
Louis looks horrified.
Sorry, that was a bit of bad stuff.
But you make a really good point. Like in 2019, he finished 12th in the F2 championship. And the year later, he won. And he didn't just win. He beat Callum Ilott, Yuki Tsunoda, Robert Schwartzman, Nikita Mazepin, I mean, we don't count him, Guan Yu Zhou, Christian Lundgaard, Louis Delatraz, Felipe Drugovich, Luca Giotto, Dan Ticktum, don't count him. The list goes on.
F2 was pretty good that year.
F2 was incredibly competitive. He won by 14 points, but he won.
Yeah.
The man
consistency that got it.
The man can do the driving. Like he can definitely do the driving. Consistency wise, early in the season, I mean, like 11th, 7th, 4th, retired, and then 3rd, 9th, 14th, 7th, 2nd, 6th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, 3rd, 5th, 4th, 1st, 3rd, 4th, 7th, 6th, 18th. But like, there's a period there where he's actually settled into like some consistent top fives. 9, with 7 of them on the podium. He's good. So
He is good.
yeah, it's a shame that we're having this. I wouldn't want to have this sort of conversation about any driver, but I feel worse for Mick than I would for most other drivers, purely because of the pressure he's under because of the association. And I think people just forget that he's his own person.
I think, unfortunately, Mick, because he had the very quiet first year, and no one expected anything from that Haas, and it was fine for him just to waltz around and beat Mazepin because, let's face it, anyone could.
Except for in Russia, where Mazepin knew what clouds look like.
And still finished last 2 laps down. Great. that episode of Drive Spot killed me. But the thing is, I think another thing that's really added to the pressure is the fact that not only were Haas very competitive at the start of the season, and he failed to score points, but the fact that Magnussen came in on such short notice and immediately started scoring points. He'd gone from absolutely wiping the floor with a teammate. We came into the season going, well, he's going to beat Mazepin again. Everything happened and Mazepin gets kicked out. Magnussen comes back and we go, well, Magnussen's taken a year out. It's, new cars, etc. He's not had long to sort of figure it out.
Then he comes in and puts it P5 on his return.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Mick doesn't score points for quite some time. It takes him a while, and he has a lot of it.
When did he get his first point? Sorry, Louis, I interrupted you then.
Austria? Or was it Britain?
Wasn't it Hungary?
No, it's before.
No, that was when he was in 10th and Lewis was right behind him, wasn't it?
I can find out one.
Yeah. I think it was Silverstone because Max was sniffing his ring piece, wasn't he?
Oh no, sorry. Yeah, Great Britain 8th, and then Austria 6th. Sorry,
when he got driver of the day in Austria.
Yeah, it was Austria where he was
double
where
points.
he was basically a roadblock. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact it took him that long, especially when Kevin Magnussen was doing such a good job, and when that Haas was very competitive, I think put a lot more eyes on Mick than we were probably expecting from him this season. So I think that's probably added to it in that constant looking for points, but then crashing because then ultimately because you got to think about it. Ultimately, his crashes and the amount of damage that he's done to that Haas this year has cost the team in development. They've not been able to afford to bring new parts and develop new parts because they're having to replace all the bits that Mick has broken. And when we're in such a tight budget now in Formula One, every single one of these incidents means so much, and it can really hinder the team. And I think that's also another thing that's just going to keep adding to this pressure, is because Gunther and the rest of Haas are going to go, you've got to stop crashing, because you're not just harming yourself and your own reputation and how you look to others, but you're actually really affecting the team and their ability to progress. And I think it could possibly be one of the reasons why we've seen Haas drop off so much this season. It's just because they've not had the money and not had the resources because of the lack of money.
A bit like Braun in 09. Incredibly competitive in the sort of first 2/3 of the season, and then once the money dried up, it just started that gap started to close. Yeah, no, it's a very good point.
Yeah. The big difference, Haas weren't challenging for the championship at the start of the season.
Yeah, no, that's true. They've come from a slightly different.
The same logic.
Mick's first points was in Britain, by the way.
Yeah, Steve confirmed that earlier, Louis.
Sorry, I was trying to think of my own point.
No, that was actually it was Tom. I won't take credit for that, but I was
a team effort. It was a team effort.
Yeah, we all got that.
Team effort.
But I won.
Woo! Are we surprised about De Vries to Alpha?
No,
not after.
I'm surprised.
I'm surprised Alpha Tauri.
I'm not surprised.
I thought Williams.
Yes,
I thought Williams with the Mercedes connection.
Yeah, and then maybe Albon back to Alpha Tauri.
Someone kind of points out it's kind of weirdly back with the way that it's done. So we've got Albon, who is a Red Bull driver in a Williams, which is usually associated with Mercedes, but now we've got a Mercedes driver now in the Red Bull associated team. It is all very odd.
Look, it's modern Formula One. Nothing needs to make sense. It's all for the show. Nothing
does make sense.
nothing makes sense. But more oddly, Pierre and Esteban are the same.
Oh, that is
team.
going to be so fucking.
Well, they've posted a lovely sort of buddy sort of picture on Instagram this morning, going, "Oh, yeah, well,
Two people
did.
from Normandy, born in the same year, in the same town, working in the same team in Formula One." Oh,
It's
These two French
And if he
guys
does anything, I'm going
for
to
a
fucking
French.
lamp him.
it's a match made in heaven or a boxing ring. They're the same thing in this case. It's just it's gonna be a nightmare.
Netflix gonna have a field day.
Yeah.
well, no, because it's finally a rivalry. It's finally an inter-team rivalry that they don't need to fabricate during the Drive to Survive
Hey,
era.
no, she's got a good point. Like well done. It's yeah, they might actually work quite well if they can keep it professional. Like there's no problem. Like we've had instances in the past where two athletes in a team have not gotten along but harvested good results together. I mean, a good example is Valentino Rossi and George Lorenzo in Yamaha and MotoGP. They did not get along, but they managed to put most of the personal stuff aside and actually work towards the team goal. And that's the key thing is what Otmar said in I think Quali or FP3 is that they've had a discussion and that they've agreed to work together for the betterment of the team, because at the end of the day it is a team sport, and I'd be very surprised if Pierre resorted to shenanigans. I get the impression he's quite, like, to me anyway, he seems like quite a mature chap. I've never been a big Esteban Ocon fan, but I mean, again, he would be putting his drive at risk if he did start to throw spanners and hurt the team's results. So I think the most of the weight is actually on those two to actually behave themselves and work together amicably, because they kind of have to.
There's also some weight on Alpine to deliver a car that can last a season. But I'll let Louis go
actually sign a contract before they announce their drivers. That's probably something to pick up on.
That's not signed in crayon.
No, but
I promise to drive for you. Signed, Fernando.
But I think there's definitely a good way to think, because if you think about it, if you've got two drivers that are so hell bent on beating each other, you know that they're going to be giving it their all every weekend.
I like Mercedes 2014 to 2016.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Wait, hang on. Are you talking about that YouTube bloke?
Yeah, the one that's not allowed in the F1 paddock.
Oh, because you're scared of needles. That's the one. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that guy. The YouTuber is really irritating. The guy who I mute every time they turn to him for a 20-second opinion because I just don't care.
Can we actually...
It me a second, man.
I mean, like JB is a much better commentator than
I love Jinso. Look, give me JB and Karun in a commentary box. I'm a happy man.
I'm not the biggest fan of Karun.
I'm not. Like, when
get out.
When they tried to replace Ted Kravitz with him, like, I was good.
I like it when Ted's around.
Anytime Ted is around, he starts saying something, and then we just have Croft again. 2 seconds, Ted.
Well, that's just Sky F1 direction. Like, they could sort that. Well, it's kind of more like a connection of
isn't it?
Yeah. They have the F1 stream, and then they could always just mute that, I guess, because the audio messages don't always come through from the radio.
No, sometimes they're just written out.
Yeah.
No, what we could do is put Will Buxton, Peter Stringfellow.
Isn't he dead?
And no, we can bring him back. He's not dead. We can bring him back. And
I really apologise to anyone who's still watching.
And Jacob Rees-Mogg in a commentary box. At least one of them would know what he's talking about, but none of them would actually be entertaining. No, I see. I'm a big fan of Karun though. He's a bit of an encyclopedia for F1 history as well.
Yeah.
I think that's why I enjoy his comms so much. And
he's certainly not as bad as Paul de Resta or Crofty.
Yeah. I
I
think
find Anthony Davidson really boring. That's just me.
Yeah.
No, I like Ant, but I get what you mean. It's all very dry and
He's
I feel like
this
there's
guy
other people
has-
that can say exactly the same thing he does. He doesn't really need to be there.
I have had the pleasure of meeting Ant briefly at Silverstone a few years ago. He's an incredibly lovely chap. Like, he's a very, very friendly man. He's not the most engaging commentator, I feel.
He's just like you. He's just like your quintessential middle class. Went to a private school.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he's not been on the new version of Top Gear yet.
Oh, just about
Or he
everybody
might
else
have been.
has.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know. I don't
know.
watch that shit.
Yeah. In saying that though, he is a Mercedes sim driver or simulator driver, so he does actually have some really good insights into the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes to actually get these cars to the level that they are. A fairly common misconception especially with newer fans, and I mean, if you're new to the sport, like, it's absolutely fine to think what you want, but the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes, I mean, 80% of the work is we don't see it. It's not a turn up on Friday, pack up on Sunday, take 3 weeks off and go to the next race. It's a full-time job, and there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes. So
Very little
I do
downtime
like when he's
as
on.
well.
There's so little downtime, and it's really interesting to hear insights from people who actually still work actively within the sport at the moment. Big shout out to Mario Sola as well. Someone I know that we've had on Shakedown on Grid Talk in the past as well.
He's Pirelli head of.
Yeah. But Pirelli's head of motorsport, basically.
That's it,
yeah. So he was in the commentary box for, I think, FP1 or FP2. Might have been FP2, and just really, really fascinating insights into the amount of work that goes into tyre development. A lot of people just think that they're just a big round rubber donut. You put it on the car, and there's 3 different compounds or 5 or whatever, and some go faster and some go slower. But there's so much work that goes in, and I would really like to hear from him again, because it was very educational. I really enjoyed it. So
I'd guess it was FP2 because they were having extended running to test the 2023 Pirelli tyres.
Yeah, it was.
However, it was pacing it down.
Did they cancel that because they didn't pack the intermediates and wets? Is that why?
Well, no, they did the extended running, but
they didn't do any testing, did they?
No,
because
it was wet.
Yeah, they wouldn't have got.
It was the slicks that they were going to do.
God, who would have thought raining in Japan and in a transitional part of the season? That's.
Do you remember 2019 when we had to have quali like a few hours before the race?
Because of the typhoon.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Getting up stupid o'clock in the morning to watch quali, and then
because quali was about 2 a.m. here. And then the race was at 6 a.m. or like 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. or something.
God, that sounds so awful, Tom.
Oh, shut
I really feel for you guys.
Steve, let us just use our European privilege.
Let me have my moment.
This is a travesty. I'm writing to I was about to say the Queen. I'm so sorry. I'm writing to the King. Charles?
Yes.
I'm writing to him.
Look how much this is the Commonwealth. This is the state of the Commonwealth in 2022. Where our members don't even know the name of the new king.
King Leclerc.
King Chuckles.
King LeGreg. But no, it's nice being able to have a gin instead of a coffee whilst I lower the tone of this recording. Thank you very much.
So I've had a coffee and a hot chocolate and a bacon sandwich.
You need a gin, mate. That's what you need.
Out of bed,
I've got a bottle of fizz in the fridge.
Well, actually, it's funny. It's funny you should say that, because I've been teetotal for a year and a bit, and
well done.
Well, I was chatting to two of my best mates, because we've got a group chat, and I said I think I'm going to slowly start introducing a bit of booze again.
Yeah.
It took me 6 years of sobriety to do that.
It's not that I ever thought like I had a problem with something, but when I was starting my because I'm on medication for depression and for ADHD, so I've abstained from booze while I've been sort of sorting all this out, and now that everything is sort of like settled and all the rest of it, there's nothing that says I can't. I just made a conscious decision to not do it or not have any whilst I was sorting my head out and all the rest of it. So yeah, but no,
Good on you, man. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah,
I was never a big drinker anyway. To be honest, I was usually designated driver.
This is the first drink I've had in about 6 months, and I'm only doing it because I'm back on Grid Talk, and it's nice, and it's probably the last time I'll be on Grid Talk, considering the direction I've dragged it in on multiple occasions.
See, we've still got you coming back on at this point. You're going to be coming back on for as long as you're happy to come back on.
I've already got an email from Jared saying that I'm fired, even though there was never a contract in place. So I've done really well to achieve that. Big applause for me. Well done.
Yeah. So you're sorry. Well done. You managed to not be fired from something that you do voluntarily and don't have an employment contract
somehow managed to
for.
circumvent employment law and be fired for something you were never employed in the first place.
Yeah. Have you considered a career in the law?
Or in the Ferrari strategy team. Yeah, yes. How do you guys make decisions? I don't know. We just come in the morning and we make it up.
Random number generator.
RNG.
Exactly.
RNG. Yeah,
it's like one of those spin wheel things. They just have it like Wheel of Fortune.
It's
like
that Football World Cup octopus. He's just in a cage or a glass
George or something.
Or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Paul the octopus.
Oh, Paul the octopus.
Yeah.
And because of that thing, like anytime I go to a Japanese place, I'm not allowed to order any octopus because my mum still has association with that octopus and thought it was really cute, so I can't eat it.
Oh, brilliant!
Especially in front of my mum.
Oh dear, it's a shame. Octopus is good.
It is really good.
Yeah. It's lovely.
Right.
Just reminded of that scene in The Boys now.
I haven't seen it, so keep stum, please.
Shh, no spoilers.
Right. On that note, thank you to anybody who stuck around for that post show. I don't know why
more viewers in the post show than we did for the actual show. Just say.
I don't know why on earth people listen to us, but that was thoroughly entertaining and a bit of a serotonin boost that I needed this morning. So yeah, thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to everybody for commenting. Jared, I've seen you in there, and I look forward to listening to you on the show tomorrow. Just to say thank you to Ruby, Louis, and Steve. Thank you as always, my friend. Really lovely to see you back. And all jokes aside, it's always an adventure when you're on, and long may it continue. So yes, thank you to everybody for watching, commenting, partaking. And yes, we will see you tomorrow.
And thanks to Aidan as well.
Cheers, Aidan.
Cheers, Aidan.
Thank you.